The International Newsnet World Report is a national television news show available in more than 30 million homes. We broadcast daily real news the networks won't tell you. We are solely viewer-supported. That means you. You can donate at our website, inenworldreport.net. We hope you find the following interview informative and helpful.
The Senate approves $150 billion in war funding for 2008. The Bush administration has also asked for an additional $42.3 billion, and they'll probably get it. The total cost of the Iraq war to date is $611 billion. This, as the U.S. debt, the national debt, nears $10 trillion. To explain more of this lunacy, we're joined on the telephone by the Executive Director of the National Priorities Project, Greg Speeter. Welcome to INN, Greg.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Greg, the National Priorities Project is a research organization that analyzes and clarifies federal data so that people can understand where their tax dollars go. What do you make of this latest spending increase? Well,
I think the amount of money that's being asked for is enormous. The war cost is enormous. Just to put that in perspective, what will be a $610 or $611 billion expense is far beyond what we spend on anything else in the federal government. Just to give you some indication of how much we're spending this year, it would cost about $125 billion to rebuild every school in this country. And we have a third of the schools in this country that need to be either rebuilt or substantially repaired. We will be spending over $150 billion if Congress and the President agree on this bill. So, that's just one way to put it in perspective. It would cost about $20 billion to provide health insurance for every child who has no health insurance in this country. And we're talking about $150 billion if Congress goes along with the President.
Well, Greg, before we continue on this line, we overwhelmingly elected the Democrats now in the majority in Congress to change the direction of the country. And every one of them, not every one of them, many of them ran on a platform of ending the war and putting our priorities back in order and helping Americans, at least using American tax dollars to help Americans. Do you think this has been some kind of a betrayal? And how is this settling out? And how is this settling on people that finally get the information that you're bringing forward?
Well, I think polls once again yesterday or today that were really show that the public overwhelmingly wants us to get out of Iraq. And I think that, clearly when we talk to all kinds of organizations from all around the country who are really quite frustrated with this, I think that there are some proposals in both the Appropriations Committee in the House and in the Senate that are controlled by the Democrats that would at least make some substantial changes in how that money that is about to be appropriated, or could be appropriated, is to be spent. But, my sense is that the public really wants more change than this and is looking for ways that we can work with other countries in the region to work on more diplomatic ways to address this problem.
Well, Greg, that poll indicates that 7 in 10 Americans want the proposed allocation reduced. They're talking about not only a reduction of troops, but a reduction of their money that's being spent on this war. This is what the people want, and this is even with the compromises the Democrats are trying to push through. This is not being accomplished. Can you see any way that this can go forward in a political manner? And then certainly we want to talk about where this money is going and where it could go.
Well, I think that the public is going to hold elected officials accountable, and I think they're looking for some more creative answers than what is out there right now. The amount is just so enormous that I think that the elected officials, be it Democrats or Republicans, are going to have to face up. We're talking already, the typical congressional district has already spent $1 billion on this war, and I think people need to keep that in mind. And as they begin
the typical congressional districts, so you're saying that there are, on the average, there's 600 or so congressional districts, and each one is spending $1 billion. So I go
on average, yeah, there's about 400. We have already spent $456 billion. If this budget is additional 150-some billion is added, it will be $600 billion. But we have 435 congressional districts, and we've already spent $456 billion.
What would $1 billion do in a congressional district, especially one with low-income problems and people fighting to survive? What could that money do to help?
Well, let me just say, first of all, that people can find out how much their congressional district has already spent on this war by going to our website. We have a trade-offs feature where they can click on the state and the congressional district, and we'll tell you which congressional district if you give us the zip code. And so that you can find out exactly how much your congressional district has spent and what that money could buy. But essentially, it could build 80 to 100 schools. It could provide health care for virtually everybody who has no health insurance. So it could deal with many major crises that are facing communities. It could build thousands of housing units. It could employ tens of thousands of school teachers. So this is an enormous amount of money, and it's coming at a time when our cities are in really bad shape. We have child poverty rates. There were just some new figures released a couple of weeks ago. The numbers in child poverty are absolutely astronomical, and they should be on the headlines of every newspaper. Detroit has a child poverty rate of 44%. Atlanta, 58%.
Well, Greg, let's look at that in comparison to the S-chip program right now that George Bush is planning on vetoing. It's not going to be a winner in the popularity polls here. Can we directly contrast his planned veto against where that money could have gone, the money for the war?
Sure. I mean, here's a good example. You know, we have about 9 million children who have no health insurance. We've had uninsured children. It's been a major problem for years. This bill would, if funded for the next 5 years, would cut the number of people who have no health insurance in half. It would go from 9 million children to 4.5 million children. That's a major accomplishment to be able to do that. That bill would cost between $5 and $7 billion a year. We spend that amount of money in 12 days on the war. In 12 days. We could fund that program for those 5 years in 2 months of what we're spending on this war. And yet, the president says we have no money. We have no money for health insurance. I mean, when we're talking about security, I think we need to really redefine what we mean by security. Here's a way to provide health insurance for half the kids who don't have health insurance in this country.
So when we look at trade-offs in the national way, taxpayers in the United States will pay $11.1 billion for ballistic missile defense. And that trades off to 3,157,107 people, health care for that many people. When you look at the war itself, $456 billion, that's 130 million people, health care for 130 million people. When you just look at the tax cuts for the 1% of the wealthiest Americans, that translates into more than 16 million people health care for